now being recorded.
Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little about who you are and how you came to be a life energy coach?
Okay. My name is Holly Eburne, and I have been a sport physiotherapist for over 30 years. Sport because I took extra training but traveled with Canadian national athletes around the world, and it was like coaching the whole person. It wasn't just the physical. So when my husband was diagnosed 5 years ago with dementia, and we were only in our 50s, it was about 2 years later when the reality hit me, and I sunk to the bottom of the lowest point of my life. And I've lost my mom and my sister, and I've had other losses, but this really hit me, as well as our financial loss. And I knew that I had to do something different, which was I didn't want to go to a counselor. I have patients who go to counselors and they're still on antidepressants. I needed something that was different, and I had heard about life energy coaching. I didn't know what that meant, and I got in touch with one. She's in Texas, and so it was over the phone, and I thought, well, wow, how do you do that? But now that I understand energy more, it was one of the turning points for my life in just dealing with the reality of our present situation. So it was a great model for me. And then I just started taking courses, and one thing led to another, and here I am.
So the life energy coach came out of a situation with your husband. Can you tell us a little about him and his diagnosis?
Yeah. Dave was in his late 40s, and there was some warning signs. He was a high school teacher, and it was a pretty stressful job. And there would be just little things like if he was making grocery lists, and he wouldn't recognize like an item I wanted to get him wanted him to get at the store. And so I just, these little red flags, and I thought, okay, that's got to be stress. And it got a little bit worse. He started having seizures in his early 50s. Again, okay, well, seizures are in his family, so, this is stress-related. He was sleeping more. He was losing interest in hobbies. Again, chalked it all up to stress. He wasn't diagnosed till he was 56, going on 57, when it got out of hand, when I realized that all the brain books that I was buying for him and the food that we had, the nutrition that we had changed to, brain, healthy food wasn't working. But I still didn't suspect dementia. I thought, okay, maybe he's dealing with a tumor, maybe he's dealing with an irritation of the brain. It's all fixable. It can be fixable. Let's just say it's not always, but when the doctor showed us the CT scan and said, I'm very sorry that he has a form of dementia, I don't know what type, because of his age. And then it was 2 weeks later when they came up with his diagnosis of frontal temporal dementia. And by then I had the reality, not the reality, but I knew that I didn't need to seek a second opinion because I knew that he was right. It was a shock.
Now, obviously, this is something that is much more prevalent in the older community.
No,
seeing that he is a...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
His dementia is more prevalent in the older population, but his form of dementia is the second and maybe the most prevalent form of dementia in under 65. It's not, generally it's the onset's in their 40s or 50s. There's some people that have been diagnosed in their 20s and some in their 70s, but the average age is in their 40s and 50s, his form of dementia. But I had never been introduced or even was aware of that type of dementia. It starts in the front of the head and the sides, and it presents itself differently than Alzheimer's, which is only one form of dementia. People think that all dementia is Alzheimer's. No, Alzheimer's is only one form of dementia, and it affects more the memory initially and directions, whereas Dave, his is more language, just not finding words, just changing his social behavior, asking questions that are quite young, that you would expect he'd know the answers to, or even talking about normally wouldn't, like bathroom talk. So it's more of a social language deficits initially, and then progresses to memory direction. Actually problem solving is tough for him, judgment, reason, common sense. Yeah.
As a young caregiver, we hear a lot about the caregivers who are caring for their elderly parents, but you are the spouse. So what kind of struggles has this presented for you?
Whoa. You see, my grandmother and my uncle, they both have dementia, so I know what it's like to be a secondary caregiver. But to be a primary caregiver and to be in what I think is the prime of my life, this is what I expected to be the prime of my life, it's hard to explain because there's so many facets to it. So you're grieving the loss of a life partner. You're someone who was able to share in the raising of your children, who would be able to help around the house, and who's someone you would thought you had another 3 or 4 decades to grow old with. And it is, I'm living with it 24 hours a day. It's not like I can go and visit my grandma and then leave knowing somebody else is going to take care of her. The responsibility, the buck stops with you as the spouse. And for the first couple of years, I thought that it really only stopped with me, and it's only recently as I've grown and evolved that I'm accepting and asking for help and know that this does not have to be a lonely journey, and it isn't all on my shoulders, that people are and want to help out. But it's quite an experience, one that I just never imagined I'd be going through. But anyway, it is. I wouldn't trade it. I know that may seem really odd to a lot of people, and that might even anger some people because they say, "How dare you?" But I'm in the middle of it. I've lived with this for over 5 years, and personally, what it's done for me and the peace that I found and and just the patience and the